Welcome to Bible Study Hub. I'm Ann Wiggins, and I'm so happy to be with you tonight as we continue our study in the book of Genesis. Just to catch us up from where we have been, we're in the middle of the story of Jacob, and it's quite a harrowing story, as you've probably noticed if you've been with us. So last week, God told Jacob, finally, I want you to go back to your homeland, back to your father. And so Jacob, as a gracious and loving husband, actually consults Rachel and Leah, his wives, and says, will you go? And they say, yeah, you know what? Our father has not been good to us either. He's kind of taken everything from us. We're with you. Let's go. So he waits until Laban, his father-in-law, is off shearing sheep to put like a 3-day buffer journey in between them. He loads up the family and all of his things, and they take off. Well, Laban pursues and catches up to Jacob when he figures that he's left. Somebody tells him he's gone. And he is told by God, Laban is on the way, don't talk to him. Don't speak anything good or bad. Be careful not to do that. And Laban goes ahead and talks to Jacob, which we just said last week is just, wow, really? This is not a man, Laban, who worships the one true God. So he is an idol worshiper, he is a pagan, and that is reflected in his absolute defiance of the one true God. And God graciously does not strike him dead on the spot for this. So let's pick it up in chapter 31, verse 43, which is where we left off last week, and we'll get back into this here. It says, then Laban answered and said to Jacob, this is after Jacob is, I'm sorry, I forgot one little part. Jacob has just said to him, basically, like, you've been awful to me for 20 years. I've served you. You've cheated me. You keep changing my wages. This is not okay. So this is Laban's response. He answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters. The children are my children. The flocks are my flocks. And all that you see is mine. Okay, I just have to insert here. No, it's not. This is not true. The wives belong to Jacob. Those are his children. And all the flocks and all the animals, Jacob got those fair and square because Laban kept making a deal with Jacob. And then when God would bless him, he would change the terms of the deal and God would still bless Jacob. So Laban is just postulating himself for a place of power here, but none of that is true. He goes on to say, but what can I do this day for these my daughters or for their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. And they took stones and they made a heap. And they ate there by the heap. They were eating as part of the covenant. So Laban is about to relent and he's going to make a covenant with Jacob. But don't think for 1 second that he's being magnanimous here. Don't think for one moment that Laban is having a real change of heart, that maybe he's like, well, you know, you actually are a pretty good guy. No, Laban does nothing for anybody except for Laban. Laban is all about himself. Do you know people like this? Like, even if they seem to make the right choice, it's always to benefit themselves, never anybody else, because they don't care about anyone but themselves. That is Laban. Moving on to verses 47 to 50. Laban called it the heap. Okay, do you really expect me to get through this? I'm going to do the best I can. Jagar, Sada, Hatsura. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. Therefore, he named it Galeed. And Mitzvah, for he said, the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. This is so ridiculous, my friends. If you oppress my daughters, okay, hard stop right there. Hang on a second, just have to insert this. What did the daughters say about their dad when Jacob gathered them? Do you remember this? When he said, hey, well, basically, will you go with me? And they were like, yeah. I mean, they didn't say our dad oppressed us, but they might as well have, because all the words they use mean that they were oppressed by their fathers. So what on earth is wrong with this man? If you oppress my daughters, oh, I'm sorry, like I've been doing for 20 years, going on. Or if you take wives beside my daughters, probably not going to happen since he hasn't done that in 20 years, except for their handmaids, which they were the ones who suggested that, going on. Although no one with us is with us. See, God is witness between you and me. Okay, I kind of get my hackles up about Laban. I'm just going to put that out there. He gets my hackles up. I can't help it. I just don't like it when people don't act in good faith, and that man is rotten to the core. Bless Jacob's heart for hanging in there for 20 years. I don't know how he did it. We keep saying he was a righteous man. I mean, he really was. How many of us would have lasted 20 years with this guy? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I would have been out. No way. So this heap of witness that has two names, one of them really long and hard that I can't pronounce, and one, thank goodness, Galid, which is a lot easier. So Laban is speaking Aramaic. That's an Aramaic word. Jacob is speaking Hebrew. It's the same word, and it just means heap of witness. So that's all that is. It's a bigger deal on the page than it actually turns out to be. So Laban is just pretty much saying, we're going to make this treaty to make sure that you don't abuse my family. Okay, whatever. Moving on to verses 51 to 55. This is where he's really going, though. That was just a power assertion on his part to just try to put Jacob down. Now we're getting to the meat of what he's really concerned about. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness and the pillar is a witness that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me to do harm. Then he calls on Jacob's God, the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They cut a covenant. And they ate bread, and they spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning, Laban rose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. So this pillar is a boundary, and Laban's just saying, I want you to tell me that you're not going to come attack me. And then he says, I won't come and attack you either, which we all would be suspect based on previous interaction with Laban, knowing that he's a liar and a cheat. I don't put a lot of stock in that, but at least he said it. And what he's really concerned about is that Jacob won't probably get to where he's going and then change his mind and think, Laban was actually really awful to me. I think I'm going to go get that guy. So Jacob is a man of honor. He will keep that. Now we're going to head into chapter 32. Now, I just have to say, 32 is one of those chapters in the Bible that for, I expect, thousands of years, rabbis, theologians, regular people like me have tried to figure this out, and nobody really knows exactly why the things that happened here, which I love. I love that about the Bible, that there are passages that we look at, we understand. I mean, it's obvious what's on the pages of scripture, I get it, but I don't know why. I have so many questions about it. I don't know what the ramifications are. And I just don't think anybody really knows. So I guess we have to wait till heaven to find some of these things out. So we'll look forward to that. But anyway, we'll pick up in verse 1, obviously, of chapter 32, and buckle your seatbelts because this is an amazing chapter. So it says in verses 1 to 2, Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. Don't you love how understated the Bible is? It's almost by the way, so he's walking along. Oh, no, by the way. And then the angels of God met him. And then moving on. And then when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's camp. So he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And then that's kind of it about that experience with the angels of God. That's right there. I don't even know what to say about that. Let me show you a picture of current day Mahanaim. There it is. So this is the area where this story takes place. There's obviously been excavation and dams built and things like that were not there when Jacob was there. But I just kind of like to see, okay, that was basically where he was. That was sort of the landscape. That's kind of what it looked like. Kind of an interesting thing to do. So do you remember the last time, though, that Jacob encountered angels? Do you remember that was on his way the other direction when he had to leave home? He's on his way to the homeland of his mother. And he has this dream, and the angels of God are going up and down on a ladder or a staircase. And God, at that moment, really really officially conveys on him the Abrahamic covenant and tells him, I will bring you back. So as he's going back 20 years later, the angels of God meet him again. This is again, is there a connection there? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there is, and I just don't know what it is, but it's interesting. But it even gets more interesting. Verses 3-5. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, thus you shall say to my lord Esau. And so he says, here's exactly what I want you to say to him. He's a very organized, well thought out kind of guy. He says, tell him this, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants. I have sent to tell my Lord, he's referring to Esau, not a capital Lord, that in the God sense, this is just in a respect way, in order that I may find favor in your sight. So Esau has settled in this land of Seir, and Jacob is about to pass through. Remember when he last had contact with Esau, Esau vowed that he was going to kill his brother Jacob as soon as his dad died. He was so angry at Jacob for basically defending what belonged to him because they had bartered and Jacob had bought that birthright fair and square. It did not belong to Esau. Jacob did not steal it. I know 99.9% of the commentaries talk about him stealing. You can't steal something that you own yourself. It's yours. You can't steal it. That's where we are with this. At any rate, he did deceive his father in order to get him to give it to him. And that's where the beef is particularly. But Esau was the one trying to steal it. I have a dry throat tonight. So this is encapsulating what he just did. Just number one, he refers to himself as Esau's servant. So that's good. That's a good start. He says, I've been staying with Uncle Laban. He highlights, I've been blessed by God with material wealth. And then he sends these messengers to Esau, hopefully, in order to find favor with him. So he just really does continue to be a righteous man because he could have said to himself, this is the guy that wanted to kill me. I don't trust him. God has promised to bring me back to the land, which means I'm safe. I can't possibly be killed or God's promise won't come true. So I'm going to arrange for an army to attack my brother and get him out of the way because I don't trust him. He could have totally done that, but he doesn't. He instead is just really hoping that they can reconcile and not be at war with each other. Verses 6-8. And the messengers returned to Jacob saying, we came to your brother Esau and he is coming to meet you. Okay, everything sounds good so far until the next sentence. And there are 400 men with him. That's not a welcome wagon, friends. That's an army. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people who were with him, his family and his servants, and the flocks and herds and camels into two camps. So he separates them out, thinking, if Esau comes up to one camp and attacks it, then the camp that is left will escape. So Jacob now realizes that this is truly a show of power and he feels very much in danger. And I love to, he continues to be so concerned for his family. We saw it with when he consulted his wives, as we said a number of times. We're seeing it here. He's dividing the family up. So if one camp is attacked, at least half of them can get away. And we're going to see this again when he's concerned and praying that God, he says, God, I'm afraid that they're going to attack me and my children, my wives and children. Verses 9-12. And Jacob said, he prays now. This is such a beautiful prayer. Oh God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, oh Lord, who said to me, he's claiming the promise God made, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff, I crossed this Jordan. He says, when I went that way, all I had was a staff in my hand. And now, coming back, I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me and the mothers with the children. It's not just himself he's concerned with there. But you said, God, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. What a fabulous prayer. I mean, this would be a study in and of itself. In fact, I want to take some more time personally and just really kind of marinate in this prayer because it's so informative in my own life. First of all, he calls on God to just simply remember his promise. Like, that's okay to do. That's a good thing to do. Why does God forget? Well, of course not. Do you need to remind him? No. But it's that communion with him. It's saying, God, this is what you said. And I can hold you to it because I believe you, because I know you are faithful. That's a beautiful thing to do. He's humble. He says, I'm not worthy of even the least of what you've done for me. You've been so good to me, Lord. I don't deserve it. He recounts where God has brought him. Hey, when you brought me this way, I only had a staff in my hand. Now look at what you've done as I come back. He intercedes not just for himself, but for his wives, for his children. And then I love this part. I'm going to put this up there. He is honest with God. He says, God, I'm afraid. I love that. I love the intimacy. I mean, he just said all this other really great stuff, and it's really great stuff. But he didn't end that by saying, so I guess we're all good. Like, I don't feel any fear at all, because that wouldn't have been true. He was afraid. And it is okay to say to God, God, I just have to be honest with you, even though I know that you know this already. I know you know my heart. You know it better than I do, but I'm afraid. I have fear about this. I need your help. I'm calling on you for protection. I'm calling on you. I'm interceding on behalf of my children or my grandchildren or my parents or whoever it is, calling on you to keep your promises, dear Lord. Oh, it's a beautiful prayer. Well, let's go on to verses 13 through 16. So he stayed there that night, and from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau. Here's the present: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their calves, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. These he handed over to his servants, every drove by itself, in other words, pockets of animals, which would be the droves, and said to his servants, pass on ahead of me and put a space in between drove and drove. So this is somewhere in the vicinity. Like, if you just add up just the known animals, it's about 550 animals. But then there's the calves that come along with the camels, and we just don't know how many calves there were. So is this 570 animals? Is this 600 animals? I don't know. But this is a huge present. This is no small deal. So he separates the animals in two groups, and he says to the servants, I want you to put spaces between the groups of animals. So I want to ask you, group, and you can go ahead and start typing way in. Why do you think Jacob arranged the animals in pockets with space in between them like this? I thought about this, and I was like, I don't know. I'm anxious to read and see what you have to say on this. I mean, I get it with people. When he said, I'm going to divide my camp into two camps. So if he attacks one camp, the other can run for their lives, maybe get away. But animals, I don't know, would really know exactly what to do or where to go. I mean, especially sheep. The sheep are really dumb. They'd probably run right to Esau and get slaughtered too. So what is the purpose of dividing all of these animals up? Truly, I'm anxious to see what you have to say. I hope somebody has a comment here. I guess it doesn't really matter if it did, the Bible would put it in there. But these are the questions I have when I'm reading through that I just think are fascinating. Like, he was so methodical, nothing here is by accident. He even tells the servants what to say exactly. So this isn't an, oh, by the way, he's got an idea in his mind. So Emily says it would give Esau the wow factor. Like, wait, there's more. Wait, there's more. I think more impactful in offering a piece. Okay, you know what? I had actually thought that through myself and thought maybe the same thing, like, like an infomercial, like, "And that's not all. You also get this Ginsu knife." Yeah, maybe that's it. Excellent. Somebody else is saying it's an offering of peace, dividing them in case it doesn't go well. Okay, so maybe he did have this thought that maybe the servants at least could get the animals and get them out of the way if he did start to attack. Maybe so. Okay. Anybody else? It's real quiet out there right now. It's kind of a hard question, right? I don't know what the answer to it is. Well, those are probably the top two thoughts that I personally had. Um, Maybe he also just didn't want to appear to be too overwhelming, so he didn't see it off in the distance, and like this huge sea of people and animals everywhere, and figure like, maybe we're maybe he's attacking us. Couple more comments here. Um, Alan says, in case Esau still had animosity, so he thought it would allow some of the um, rear groups to escape. No, Jacob was the last group, I believe. Yeah, he was in the last group. Yeah. Excellent. Susie says, maybe it's just easier to manage. Very logistical of you. I think that's a great comment. Roberta says, maybe he did it because if Esau accepted the first group, Jacob would know he was okay with his brother. Oh, excellent. Love it. Lori says the gift was huge, but this way it would look it should look overwhelming to Esau to win him over. Okay, so like kind of like Emily, like there's more coming. Yeah. Maybe so. Maybe it was I didn't think about this till right the second, but maybe those animals don't always get along if you put them all together. Like maybe the camels are mean to the goats or something. I don't know, to the donkeys. Keep them separate so all the animals get along. Who knows? Whatever it was, I think the point is Jacob is super methodical about this, and he's leaving nothing to chance, and nothing is outside of his control. He has this posse under complete control, which I really appreciate. Verses 17 to 21. He instructed the first, when Esau, my brother, meets you and asks you, to whom do you belong? Where are you going? And who are these ahead of you? Then you shall say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau, and moreover, he is behind us. He likewise instructed the second and the third, and all who follow the droves. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you find him. And you shall say, moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself stayed that night in the camp. Okay, so the language is very careful. Your servant Jacob, my lord Esau. You can see he is putting himself down under, he is raising up Esau to a level of honor, and he is being subservient, obviously extremely intentional on that as well. Now here's where it's about to get really crazy and something that we just can't really explain. The same night he arose and he took his two wives and his two female servants and his 11 children. That should be 11 sons. He actually had 12 children because we know there was a daughter in there, but the word is kind of like the same thing. And crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone. So he crosses over the whole family, all the livestock, all the tents, all the servants. Everybody goes across, and then he stays back. Why did he stay back? Well, it doesn't say exactly, but my guess, based on what we know about Jacob, what we're seeing right here, is that he stayed back to spend the night on his knees in prayer, begging God for help and mercy and just really calling on his name. But what happens instead is really mind boggling. So here we go. This is the part that's just crazy. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint. He dislocated his hip just by touching it as he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for the day has broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered or saved. Okay, what on earth was that about? There's just so many questions I have. So many. I'm not asking you to answer these. These are just the questions that went through my mind. Who started this? I mean, the Bible doesn't. How did this get started? I mean, was Jacob just lying there and this guy wakes him up and Jacob's they start tussling? Um, did God like start the fight with him on purpose? Did Jacob see some guy coming and decided to jump him? Uh, how did this even get started? Who started this? I don't know. Also, did Jacob know he was wrestling God the whole time? Or did he figure this out at some point? Why did God want to do this? But this maybe is the biggest question. Why on earth did what I assume is a pre incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ, because Jacob says, I have seen God face to face? Well, we've been saying anytime that happens in the Old Testament that God appears in bodily form, it's a Christophany. He wrestles with God all night. Why? Why did God want to do that? What is the meaning of this text? What are we supposed to glean from this? And I think, by the way, it's way beyond just the typical, well, sometimes we wrestle with God too. So Jacob wrestled with God, we wrestle with God. And, I no, I sure, yeah, whatever. That's fine. We do wrestle with God, but not in bodily form. I mean, as a girl, I don't even understand why wrestling. Like this makes no sense to me. I don't know if there's any girl wrestlers out there. If there are, my apologies. But my opinion is that wrestling for God, I don't get why you want to do that. My son and my husband, they used to wrestle until my son got big enough to take him down and the wrestling stopped. But I remember them rolling all over the floor wrestling. And then, my son would end up crying because his arm got crushed or whatever. And I would be so angry. Why do you do that? There is no reason to be wrestling. Wrestling is gross. Wrestling is meaningless. Stop doing that. So I really don't understand it. It makes no sense to me as a woman why anybody wants to wrestle. But here, let me run over to the comments real quick here. Okay. Emily's asking a question. She says, what's the translation of wrestles? Is it physical or is it conversational? It's physical. Yeah, this is an actual, like what I was just talking about. Guys just rolling around on the ground. Dottie says it's a guy thing. Yeah, it really is. I mean, I can't even imagine wanting to do this. But so here's where I'm kind of gonna go. And I'm just gonna tell you ahead of time. I don't have like hard and fast answers. I don't have some moment that we've all figured out. I don't think anybody really understands exactly why all this happens and exactly what it all means. But here's just a couple things. First of all, the last time we read about Jacob wrestling, do you remember when that was? And you might be going, what? Never says anything about Jacob wrestling. Well, kinda. Before he was born, when the two boys were in the womb, do you remember what God and Rachel, or it's not Rachel, Rebecca had this conversation. She said, she went to the Lord, she said, something is going on inside of me. And he said, that's two nations in your womb. And they're basically in combat. So think about two babies in combat in a womb. What does that look like? Well, it would look like wrestling, correct? Yeah, it would. So it's like Jacob started out wrestling for the blessing. In fact, when Esau came out, he's like, you know, water skiing on his heel, holding on for dear life. He's trying to get out first. So they call him Jacob, which basically means like he holds the heel or supplanter or whatever you want to say. So that's kind of where he started. Now we're so many years down the road, and now he's still wrestling, but now he's wrestling with God for the blessing. There's got to be something there. What exactly? I'm not totally sure. But let me even go a little different direction with this. If you ever study other religions and their small g gods, those gods have certain characteristics that are very, quite honestly, out of the human mind or out of the demonic mind. There's nothing otherworldly about these gods. They're often vindictive. We get that. Moody. We get that. You have to appease them by doing certain things to try to get them to like you enough at the moment to do something back for you. It's sort of a, you do this for me, I'll do this for you sort of situation. Sometimes there's good gods, sometimes there's bad gods. But I'll tell you what you never see in these false religion systems gods, and that is a God who incarnates into one of us to be intimately involved in our lives, who literally enculturates himself with us, who comes to live with us. Emmanuel, God with us. You don't see a God that would wrestle a person and not even give us really a reason why he's doing this. And finally, when he says, "That's it, I'm done," and the human wrestling says, "No, we're not done. You need to bless me." This is after God has dislocated his hip to make him stop it. He's so happy that Jacob won't stop that he does bless him. I don't know. I don't know. That is quite something. And I was thinking to myself, you know how we often ask the question, why suffering? Why so much suffering in the world? And nobody truly has like a great answer for that because, again, as humans, I just don't think we get it. But it occurred to me that there is no greater intimacy with God than when we are deeply involved in suffering. Is that, would anybody else say, yes, I agree with that? That has been my experience because I will tell you for myself, it has been the times of suffering in various different ways, sometimes physically, sometimes just stuff going on in my life, whatever. But whatever it is, if I would categorize it in the category of suffering, those are the times when that intimacy with God is taken to new levels for me. And sometimes it doesn't even stay there. Like when things clear up or get better, it almost drops back off again. God wants intimacy with us. There's no other false God like that. None. You won't find any. Only the one true God, only our God would go to those types of lengths to have that type of intimacy with us. Very mind blowing. Let's see, I am reading the comments here. Susie is saying, was it a foretelling? Was God warning Jacob he would fall into trouble, but don't fear, God will get him through it? Maybe it was. That's a great comment. I don't know. So anyway, when he says to Jacob, "What is your name?" The last time that somebody asked Jacob what his name was, basically, do you remember this? Maybe you're like, "What?" Remember when he walks in to impersonate his brother, and his father says to him, "Who are you?" So he doesn't exactly say, "What's your name?" But he might as well have. It's the same question. "Who are you?" And Jacob says, "I'm Esau, your eldest. I'm Esau." God says to him, "I'm going to ask you, what's your name? Who are you?" And Jacob honestly answers, "I'm Jacob. My name is Jacob." And God says, "I'm going to change your name. I'm going to change it to Israel, a name that now is a country that the Jewish people identify intensely with. They are Israelites. It's amazing. So Israel means struggles with God or contends with God, or however you want to describe that. And certainly that would describe the nation of Israel over the years, wouldn't it? As a nation that has contended and struggled with God, and to this day do. But someday the struggle will stop, and he will rule and reign over them, and they will be thrilled, and he will be their king forever and ever. Well, let's go on to verses 31 to 32. It says, "The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip." That's key. So remember that. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is in the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. And to this day, devout Jews, oh, yeah, that's the end of the verse. This is my commentary on it. So to this day, devout Jews do not eat the hindquarters of the meat. That's just, it's not kosher. Okay. Let's go on then to chapter 33. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. Oh, here it comes. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 female servants. And he put the servants with their children in the front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. That had to be rough if you were put in the front. I'm just going to say that out loud. I guess somebody had to be in the front, but wow, that would be painful to know. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. So he places them in order of preference. Rachel and Joseph at the very last end. He's not a perfect man. He's a righteous man, but in my opinion, I guess he had to do it in some form or fashion, but think about what that would have felt like to know that your dad put you like on the front lines because his favorite was in the back. That would just be hard. The bowing 7 times, a lot of times 7 in the Bible is like a really important number. It's a number of completion. It's sort of God's number. Maybe that has something to do with this, but culturally speaking, bowing 7 times, whether you were a follower of God or you were a pagan in this time, was just a really extreme show of deference to whoever it was you were bowing to. Like to bow once shows honor, but to bow 7 times is kind of the equivalent of saying you are like a king to me. I would do this for a queen. So I'm really, really elevating you. And that's probably more what was going on here. So let's find out what happens. Verses 4-11. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And when Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the servants drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. So that would be Bilhah and Zilpah and their kids. Then verse 7, Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And last, Joseph and Rachel drew near and they bowed down. Very orderly. He's got all this worked out. He has control over this family. It's beautiful. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." He's talking about the animals. But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please. If I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me." By the way, he doesn't mean like you actually look like God. He just means it's just incredible to see you. It's mind-blowing, indescribable. "Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Thus he urged him, and he took it. So the 2 boys, the twins, are reconciled. I want you to stop and think for a moment what Esau would have seen as Jacob is approaching him, because I don't think that what I'm about to say was the purpose of the wrestling, but sometimes when God does something, there's like overflow that is also a blessing that we would never have conceived of, thought of, or had any idea was coming. And I think it's one of those moments. So he's been wrestling all night before, not on a nice, clean nylon mat. He's been wrestling on the ground. Did you see that picture of Mahanaim? I mean, it's rocky terrain. It's not soft. It's dirt. It's rocks. So what did Jacob look like as he approached his brother? Esau would have had the picture in his mind of 20 years before. Whatever Jacob looked like when he last saw him. This has happened to all of us, right? You haven't seen somebody for years and years and years. And in your mind, you still picture them like they're in high school. And then you show up to your reunion and it's your 30-year class reunion and you don't recognize them for just a second. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah. And you almost see them again like they were in high school. It's weird how brains will do that. So I'm assuming that Esau was kind of in that mode of, looking for his brother, kind of expecting something similar to what left. Well, here comes Jacob. He's limping and limping badly because his hip has been dislocated. If maybe you've been in this position, or maybe you've had a loved one who has desperately needed a hip replacement, there's a certain gait with their walking that says, ouch, 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 every step that they take. It's a very painful thing to see somebody whose hip is dislocated or needs to be replaced. So he's not walking well at all. Also, he's been wrestling in the rocks. So I presume he is scratched and scraped. He probably has dried blood on him. His hair is a wreck. His clothes are probably torn. I mean, he probably looks like he has just been jumped in a dark alley. And you just wonder. I mean, Esau came with these 400 guys. Why did he do that? The Bible doesn't tell us, but I mean, was he like, I just want to defend myself if Jacob attacks me? But if that's the case, why didn't he tell that to the servants who came? Why didn't he say when they first, initiated contact with them before they went back to tell Jacob the story, when they said there's 400 men, why didn't he say to them, listen, I've got an army with me that I do not want to use. So you tell your brother, you come in peace and I will call these guys off. Why wouldn't he say that? To me, that doesn't make any sense. Or why doesn't he say to the servants, I brought 400 men with me, but not to fight. I have no plan on fighting. This is just the entourage I need for safety on the roads when I travel. Not directed at Jacob. Please let him know I come in peace. He doesn't say any of that. So it makes me wonder if he was still contemplating whether or not he wanted to take him out. I don't know. And when he saw his brother looking like he looked like he'd just been beaten to death, limping like he can barely walk, if his heart maybe just wasn't flooded with compassion, and maybe God had all of that in addition to whatever else was going on there, also to help soften the heart of Esau, his twin brothers. I'm not a twin, but I know we have several sets of twins that regularly attend this Bible study, and I hear from twins all the time. There's a special, special bond. It's like siblings have a special bond, but there's something about that twin bond, even if you're not identical twins, that you were together in the womb, you grew up together, you were never separated, you shared the same birthdays, you did everything together. There's like this special connection. And I think when they see each other and they realize that they're both now coming in peace, that there is this heartfelt, warming moment where they just go, wow, I've really missed you. It's really, really good to see you again. And Jacob just says when Esau goes, what is all this? Remember that the whole tiff was over God's blessing. Jacob getting the blessing of God, and Jacob is bold. And he says to Esau, this is the graciousness of God. In other words, God has blessed me. Remember what you wanted to kill me over? Well, God bless me anyway. But he goes on to call himself I'm your servant, and he refers to him as his Lord. So I feel like this is just another example of Jacob just being righteous. He's not backing down from his stance with God. He is a God-fearing man, but he also elevates his brother and puts himself in a subservient way. So we're going to stop with that tonight. We are out of time. But we will go on next week. The story does not get dull. I mean, it just keeps on going, keeps on getting better. It's just it's pretty amazing, pretty amazing. Okay. Shireen says she has a twin brother and sister who definitely have a bond. I did not know that you had twin siblings, Shireen. I don't think I knew that. Maybe a long time ago I did. That's really interesting. All right. Listen, I love you so much. I am so grateful that you join us for Bible Study Hub every week. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We do it live at 9 p.m. Eastern. Every Monday night, you can watch us live, YouTube or Facebook, on our Facebook group, which is Bible Study Hub. And it's a great place to be. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And I can't wait to see you next Monday. Bye.